Hello, folks. I am here at GalaxyCon in Richmond, and I am interviewing John Jackson Miller. So, I have a few questions for you, John. How did you get your start in the comic and writing industry?
I was a comics fan since age 6. I read comics. I also wrote my own. I drew my own. Photocopied them later on. As a teenager, I mailed them across the country to other people who were doing their own as well, in sort of the small press movement that was out there. Later on, edited magazines about comics, Comics Retailer Magazine, worked on Comics Buyer's Guide. That led to me meeting people at Marvel. I got to write Marvel comics for a while, Iron Man, Crimson Dynamo, and that led to me getting to write Star Wars comics for Dark Horse. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Excellent. Okay. So, what writers have influenced or continue to influence your work, or who do you draw inspiration from the most?
Well, there are so many. Among Star Wars writers, that I was greatly influenced by Archie Goodwin, who wrote a lot of the early comics for Marvel. Just a very strong writer in terms of story development, character development, and that taught me a lot of how to write a story, especially with these characters in them. And other comics writers, Chris Claremont, Jim Starlin, they influenced me. And then of course, in prose writing, Arthur C. Clarke is probably my favorite among science fiction authors. All of these people, gave me some of the impetus that got me writing.
Okay. All right. So, if you could write for any franchise that you haven't written for yet, what would it be?
Oh, well, there's a lot of possible things there. There's television shows that they don't make anymore and that there aren't fandoms for, really. I'd love to write some scripts for some old sitcoms that are long gone and where all the actors are no longer with us. Probably the one science fiction show I would love to have written something for is a show called Max Headroom that was on in the 1980s, which was about a future in which television ruled everything.
Oh, really?
And it's an absolute blast. I loved it.
Okay. When you write, what feelings or emotions do you hope to conjure within your readers? What do you want them to get out of your writing?
It depends on the scene. If it's a quiet scene where the characters are contemplative, I'm trying to get them into the mood, into the emotions with the characters, to feel what they're feeling. There'll be sections where I'll be writing and things are slow, without that much action. Well, they're slow for the characters too. They're slow for them. It's what's going on in their lives. It's the time to pause and reflect. And then, of course, in the action sequences, I want them to feel as thrilled as the characters are, or as afraid as the characters are.
Okay. All right. Of all your original characters, who was your favorite? Like, who was the most enjoyable for you to work on? And now you can separate that into Star Wars versus non-Star Wars if you want, but what you can do overall, it doesn't really matter.
That's probably easiest. In Star Wars, probably my favorite character that I created for it to write would have been Griff, the little con artist criminal who is in Knights of the Old Republic.
The mastermind.
He's a mastermind, yes. He is so much fun to write. Another one of my great favorites, I enjoyed writing Varner Hiltz, who was the historian in the Lost Tribe of the Sith stories.
Oh, yes.
A very old man who finds himself actually in a situation where he ends up becoming a ruler entirely by accident. He just sort of lucks into it. But that was a lot of fun. And I did a character that was also great fun to write. The characters that were in the Canto Bight story that I wrote, called The Ride. for that Canto Bite novel. That was fun because those were. It was almost like a live action cartoon that I was writing with those characters.
Right. Okay. All right. So many authors, to my knowledge, they don't publish their production notes if they have any.
Yeah.
So they don't publish those notes. But you do. So, what caused you to choose to publish, to let us in behind the scenes?
Yeah. I started this back when I started writing comics professionally, and part of it was obviously promotional. To put something out there that connected to whatever I was doing and give people a chance to, find out more about my thought processes behind it. Since then, it's become less about promotion and more about educating and also recording the history of something, because a lot of things I was feeling when I was writing these things I don't even remember anymore, and a lot of the details I don't remember anymore. So that's always helpful.
Makes sense to me. Okay, what's the greatest compliment you've received about your work? It could be from publisher, editor, or even the fans.
There's the fans are constantly coming forward with various books, and it's not all the same book, and they're telling me how it touched their lives, how it was important to them. I met a young fan here about a year ago who it was very clear that the Ray Sloan character in New Dawn had changed her life in some way for the better, and I was just delighted to have been able to do that. That's what I'm here for.
I think that's beautiful.
Yep.
Okay, you've worked with other comic and prose writers before, such as, you had your collaboration with John Ostrander and the writers of Dark Times and Rebellion with the whole Vector series.
Yeah.
So who would you want to collaborate with the most in the future, given the opportunity?
That was one of my few collaborations I've ever done. Most everything I've done on my own. Although within shared universes, it never feels like a collaboration.
Okay.
No, I honestly haven't given that much thought because, again, I live out in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, so it's not exactly like I can get together with them at the bar and work out a story. There are all sorts of artists that I'd like to work with too, but just about any artist that I've worked with has drawn my ideas better than I ever could have.
Okay. What's the main differences between working with how things worked when the EU was part of the continuity, versus how it is now with the Lucasfilm story group? Like, how is it working with Leland Chi or Pablo Hidalgo?
It's just one more level that the authors have to work with in terms of, we're still working with our individual publishers, and we're still working with whoever is handling that at Lucasfilm on the fiction side of things or the comic side of things.
Okay.
But then we also have interaction with the story group itself, where they'll take a look at what we're doing and they'll make suggestions to the authors.
Okay. Now, I think most of his fans know that you have a past with Dungeons and Dragons. You used to play that a lot. Do you still do anything on the,
My role-playing years were all in middle school, not even very far into high school. I haven't done much since. I'm much more of a war gamer. I play games like Twilight Struggle, rail games like 1830. Online I play Civilization a lot.
My buddy does that too. Oh yeah.
But I have done stuff for the role-playing games. The Star Wars. I wrote the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide, and I wrote a adventure for that system when it was over at Wizards of the Coast. I have to say, that is the hardest work I've ever done, just about on anything on the fiction side. It is just very, very dense writing. There's a lot involved. A single adventure will have lots of moments happening in it, and they'll have to be described in a way that somebody else can also describe it.
I personally
and it's just very elaborate. And also, if you're writing something for Dungeons and Dragons or a role-playing game where you have to talk about a character and say what their stats are, well, you can't just make those stats up. You have to have worked the character through all the levels.
Okay.
So the thing I wrote was for characters level 18 through 20. So we were actually having to sit there and do the homework. It was like doing our taxes, showing how they work from first level to second to third, just to get a few words in a stat block.
Okay. Well, that sounds really tedious, to be honest.
It was very difficult.
But, I still personally consider that some of your best work.
Yeah.
If I to give my personal opinion.
It's a lot easier to write like the campaign guide where I'm writing about the history of the universe. It's just getting the stats in there is very difficult. My wife helped me a lot on the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide, and she actually snuck in there one of the few in-jokes that got through, because in the stat block for Griff, Marin Hieroglyph, at the end of his list of possessions, it says winning smile.
I remember that. I still have that book.
It's a very valuable book, so it's a good one to keep.
Oh, yes. We were talking about cosplay earlier before the interview. What was the best cosplay out of any of your characters that you've ever seen?
I've seen so many. We at Star Wars Celebration one time, there was basically most of the cast of Knights of the Old Republic, the comics. But they're always coming up. They're always doing more. And somebody gave me a Muppet version of Griff at one point, and that just that floored me.
I think I remember that.
I love that.
Okay, now I do have a personal question.
Yes.
About actually, it's about Malik. What was it like developing his character in the comics? Because all you had to go off of was the video game, and he was one-dimensional. He was a good villain for what the story needed him to be, but he was still pretty
one.
Malik.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a case where I was trying to have some minor connections to the video game, but not overdo it. And so he was in there, and he served that role, and he was able to recur a few times. And the goal with him had been to slowly show him getting more and more, if not corrupted, at least willing to use not necessarily good thinking to do things, show that he was a little bit more selfish. I don't really feel ultimately that I did as much as I could have done to sell that. And it was because it was not his story. We just kept hopping into it and out of it. And it was not something where I was, if I had another couple of years, I could have, and if I had written it all at once, that's the big thing. If I had written it all at once and didn't have events to deal with like Vector and Vindication moving forward in the timeline, I would have probably looked at smoothing that out a bit. But it's comics, and in comics, you're making it up as you go along.
I hear that. So, I know this is probably going to be a tough question, but what was your favorite storyline of all the ones you've written? Or even, it doesn't have to be all that far back. It could be very recent if you want. What would you consider to be your best work?
Oh, that's hard to say. I mean, there are stories I'm fond of. I'm very fond of the Kenobi novel. I'm very fond of the Prey trilogy I wrote for Star Trek, because it was so big, but also it was, it accomplished almost everything I wanted it to accomplish. The Enterprise War, the novel that I had come out last year, again, I feel that it succeeded at just about everything I wanted it to do. But then shorter stories like that Canto Bight story with the gambling characters, The Ride. Again, it was just a fun story to write. Another story I wrote for the Planet of the Apes, Tales from the Forbidden Zone. I wrote a story called Murderer's Row, which was about television in 1973 as it connected to the apes when they went back to 1973. Okay. And I had so much fun with that. I just enjoy the heck out of it.
Okay. Well, as mentioned before, you've written for both continuities in Star Wars. You've written for Iron Man, Mass Effect, Battlestar Galactica. So, of all the universes you've had to work for, which one would you say you've had the most creative control over as far as story?
You know, in all of them, they try to give you enough room to write what you need to write.
Okay.
I mean, it's not something where it depends on the project, because some projects, if you're adapting a TV show or a movie, you're having to stick to that.
Okay.
So it really depends on the project.
That makes sense to me. All right. Do you miss interacting with the fans over at the hyperspace forums, the Dark Horse forums, and the old forums?
I don't like that some of the forums are just gone. They're vanished. There are frequent cases where I'm wanting to refer back to what I said years ago, and I find that those links are dead because Dark Horse no longer has its forums.
Oh yeah.
It has made me, to a degree, reevaluate how much time I really ought to be spending on some of the forums when they vanish. But the Force.net doesn't seem like it's going to be going anywhere, so that I pipe in over there. Same for Trek BBS for Star Trek.
Okay.
They seem to have been around for many years, and it's just it's really heartbreaking to get into a really insightful discussion about something and have it no longer be there forever.
Okay. So, how has your interaction overall with the fans, from even back in the boards and even now with your Twitter and Facebook experiences, how has it been? Has it been like generally positive?
It's been almost uniformly positive. I mean, it was even during the business with the story group and New Dawn. Everybody already knew me. They already trusted me.
Right.
They knew that I was interacting with the fans. There were a couple of people who were unpleasant about it, but in general, they weren't unpleasant about it to me. And,
right.
And in many cases, they cared. They just didn't know what was going to happen. And I think once they got to see the book, that resolved their concerns.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of his fans would just wish you were able to write more tales.
And who knows? We'll see.
Exactly. Couple more questions, and we'll be done. What's your all-time favorite Star Wars film?
What?
Your all-time favorite Star Wars film?
Oh, well, I guess probably Empire. Because I was 12 and the Golden Age is 12.
Okay, what's your favorite fictional character or fictional book?
Oh gosh, that's really difficult. I can't do that. That's too complicated. There's too many things in there.
I gotcha. All right. Final question. What's your stance on Kyle Katarn?
What's my stance on Kyle Katarn? I could say that he has an alliterative name. I don't have a stance on Kyle Katarn. What should my stance be on Kyle Katarn? Well,
see, some of the fandom, especially back in the older days, they would treat him like he was the Chuck Norris of the Star Wars universe.
Oh yes.
Sometimes refer to him as God, jokingly. Although that's kind of dwindled a bit nowadays.
It's dwindled so much that I don't remember the controversy.
Okay. If you want to plug any of your websites.
Yeah. My website with all my notes behind the scenes is farawaypress.com. My Twitter is JJMFaraway, and my Facebook is John Jackson Miller.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to say to the fans before?
Thank you for your support. I enjoy writing for you guys. I hope you enjoy reading.
We definitely appreciate reading all your stories over the years. And
may the Force live long and prosper.
Same to you. Thank you.